All right. Welcome to the Vendor Voice and Stratton Inspections. We've got Tiffany Turner, myself, Paul Stratton, and we have a special guest today. He's actually an inspector for Stratton Stratton Inspections. And his name is Ben Croft. Ben, we're happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
The reason I brought Ben on is he's been in the sex trafficking world. He's been an agent for sex trafficking. And I thought it would be very important in our industry, especially you as agents, maybe to watch this podcast and hopefully you get something out of it and you take from it, because we're all vulnerable in this industry. We're doing open houses. We're doing, showings. And I think it's really important to be aware of our surroundings and be vigilant. So having said that, I want to share a really quick story. This hits hard because I have firsthand experience witnessing my own daughter potentially getting taken, and that's why I wanted Ben on here today. So just a real quick story. I was in Star Valley just going into Circle K. My daughter was with me. She was 14 at the time. And I went into Circle K and a man approached my truck. Something told her to lock the door. So as she locked the door, she looked up and noticed this man's hand trying to open the door. And he was trying to coax her out of the vehicle. I think he realized after, 30 seconds to a minute that probably dad or mom was around somewhere close and got in his vehicle and took off. Well, when I got out of the vehicle, she had already put one in the chamber with my pistol.
You raised her, right?
I know, right? I always carry a gun in my truck, always. I don't chamber one, but it was chambered, and she had done it. She was on the phone with 911. She thought very quickly, but it really shook her, and it shook me as well. We never caught the gentleman, but I realized at that point how fast somebody can get taken and how easy it is to get taken. So that's why I wanted to do this clip. Yeah, it's really scary. And I know women out there that are showing homes and doing open houses, you guys are very vulnerable. So I just wanted to, get some stories from Ben and talk to him about the task that he was in the sex trafficking task force. So tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into that.
I kind of happened along into it. I did some private security work, asset recovery, things like that. And then joined a church. They wanted me to join the security team, and I kind of thought it was comical that a church would need security. And then that kind of turned into being approached by the head of a human trafficking task force, the Defender Foundation. And it was kind of like an open recruitment kind of thing. They approached me, and then I really didn't have an interest in it at first until I found out everything that was involved. And that piqued my interest because the things I had been doing prior to that were, I was kind of exiting that lifestyle and entering another one, just changing seasons of my life. And so I balanced both of them for about 5 years, balancing the church life with security and traveling doing human trafficking. But it wasn't exclusive to human trafficking. We also did slave trade work, which involves the male population. So a lot of those guys can be susceptible to the same things that women can.
So I read a little bit about your bio, and you were trained as a young kid. You were trained in jiu-jitsu. Your dad put you in that because you were getting bullied at school. Is that right?
Yeah, I was the skinny kid. I was the skinny, nerdy kid at school. Got bullied around by several different people. It wasn't one particular person or one particular group. It was just like I walked around with a target on my back. But later we found out that it was the way I carried myself. And so as I progressed up through, I've been through 5 different styles of martial arts. And the jiu-jitsu was fine, but the problem was it taught me how to keep everybody off, but then it didn't teach me how to retaliate. So then I progressed into different styles, and I learned how to be more aggressive. Then my posture changed. My whole personality and character started to take a shift. And even to this day, if I'm standing in a group or in a room, most people will ask, are you in law enforcement, service, whatever? And no, I'm not. I haven't been. But I've been in that lifestyle on and off for my entire adult life. Gotcha. So it gives me an insight sometimes.
So what are kind of walk us through what a typical day looks like in that line of work.
Mainly a lot of sitting, surveillance, getting plans together, getting organized, and then developing a plan of action. And then depending on what we were doing, we worked closely with ICE, and we would build a file, prepare the file, then turn it over to ICE, and then ICE took it to the next level. If it were a situation where ICE was not involved, then it was a little more tactical on our side. Then we go in with a whole different mindset, kind of no rules, kind of fly by the seat of your pants kind of things, kind of like the open term you could call that. But we didn't have to abide by the same rules and regulations that we would when we were doing the same things for ICE.
Can you share with us, I don't know if you're able to or not, but can you share with us some stories you might want to share? And
I'll keep them all brief, but this one was more of the slave trade. Being from Florida, there's potato farms there, and they would bring groups in, men, and they would put them all in a house at night. In this particular case, it was multiple homes. They would put them in at night, windows boarded up, chain and lock the doors, so everybody had to stay in. They would work these workers through the week, and Saturday and Sunday, take them into town, let them do their laundry, get their groceries, so on and so forth. No phones, no communication, anything like that. But the goal at the end of the week as a worker for you was to put in enough hours and enough labor to where you could get paid. And then once you reached a certain goal, they would release you. That was your debt for coming over. And then their objective in having you there was to hook you on narcotics and alcohol. So you're trading drugs and alcohol for pay. So as a worker, when I come to you at the end of the week and say, hey, my name is Ben, here's my number, can I have my check? Well, no, we've given you all this stuff during the week, so you got to stay another week. And they stay longer, stay longer, stay longer. So we did all this surveillance, we did all the intel on everything, then we were required to turn the file over. Ultimately, when we turned the file over, we found out that the people that own the houses were law enforcement. Wow. Yeah, so it got nasty really fast.
Too.
So these are the workers are coming over from other countries?
In this particular instance, they all had come south of the border. Most of them were Mexican. Some of them were South American, Guatemalan, but come from anywhere.
So most of the time there's probably a language barrier.
Yes.
Poverty, like they can't, you know.
Yeah. Often we had interpreters close by, on site, on the phone, whatever it took, so we could communicate. Because when you come in to try to extract them, they don't know if you're good or you're bad.
Right.
They think that you're trying to, like a power play, you're trying to take them because they're considered merchandise. And you're trying to take them from the people that so-called own them now. And so you're trying to get them so they'll come work for you. So they don't know if they can trust you or not. And the language barrier made it more difficult because they're fighting you because they feel like they're good where they're at.
They don't know they're being, rescued.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, absolutely correct. And it's the same for women too. Women, a lot more difficult to grab them and extract them because they are terrified of everybody, especially men, especially men suited up. You come in, whether you had badges, vests, guns, weapons, or you look like a tactical unit, that was terrifying to them because they just think that's the end. They can't think past that.
So you've done a lot of work up and down I-10.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that because this is within our own community.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've done work in Texas, I know, in Florida, here in Arizona, and all up the I-10.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about that and what that entailed.
It goes on every single day. And I think when I moved here, I saw more of it firsthand than what I did in Florida. Florida's a main corridor because they come in Miami, then they come up to Jacksonville, then they would send them down the 10 out this way toward Arizona, or they would continue to navigate further up 95 up into Pennsylvania was a hot spot. New York, not so much, but Pennsylvania, and then they would disperse them out into the inner cities, so to speak. But those were...
And these would be people that they sex trafficked.
Yes, they were sex trafficking. Big in the hotel industry, big in the massage industry, any service industry where the women are needed, those are the ones that are trafficked. If you notice in some of the hotels, when you walk by and you speak to some of them and they put their head down, they turn away, they won't speak. They're told not to speak to anyone. And if they try to, there are repercussions for that, consequences, always. If you keep trying to engage them, a lot of times someone will come out of nowhere and start talking to you, try to sidetrack you. And those people are put there for a reason. They're trying to keep you busy and occupied and leave their people alone. So there's a lot of things that go on, like your episode with your daughter. Someone could have followed you into that store, and the minute you turned to walk out, they could have sent a signal for everybody to bail. So that could have been what happened with yours, but hard to say. But things that we would encounter a lot, I remember going to a residential neighborhood, and I mean full-blown, full residential neighborhood. And there was an area in there where 4 homes were bought up and it was converted to a church. And it was an awkward looking church. It had crazy gold emblems and statues. It was just really wild, something you normally wouldn't see even in a commercial location. Church wound up being Russian mafia. And we had to sit down with the Russian mafia to get what they termed as a hall pass for 48 hours. They said if we could locate them and get them in 48 hours, we could have them, because they didn't want the files turned over to ICE. So they basically negotiated a little bit of wiggle room. And we got them out and still turned them over. So you got mafia type people, biker gangs, go far enough up the ladder, some politicians, people with money, and it always comes down to following the money, because it takes a lot of money to do those things, to house these girls, to traffic them, to transport them. It's a big, big, big business, huge. And when you start biting into that, you're biting into profits. They don't take kindly to that.
Being in the real estate business, you actually essentially became a realtor, right? Real estate agent
for the second time
for a while. And tell us why you became a real estate agent.
When I first came to Arizona, it was not my goal to do anything with houses. No building, no more construction, no more flips, no more anything, because I did a lot of that in Florida when I was younger, and had a real estate license there, an appraiser's license, climbed that ladder up and down. Building contractor, did it all. Came here and I told my wife I wanted to play with cars. And that was my goal. She was a realtor. She came in and she said, I've got 2 problems and you need to get a license. So I was like, okay, what are those? I'm doing open houses and having to do them by myself, which wasn't safe. And the other reason was she didn't like the inspectors she ran across. She had some bad interactions. She didn't trust what they were saying. Some of them, if you equate it to a doctor, like I do a lot of times, they had horrible bedside manner. And a good inspector with bad bedside manner can ruin a deal in multiple ways. Doesn't just have to be the deal with the client. It can ruin the relationship. And in this business, it's all about relationships, in the inspection business. So I went and got a license because her broker walked into an open house that she was having one day, and I was talking about deals and money and how things work. And Melissa Schwartz was the broker. And she said, got a problem with him out there talking like that. He can't do that. He's got to have a license. So I went and got a real estate license. But just before that, I had picked up my inspector's license and started doing that because it was good income. Pretty fun job. Kind of kept my head above water.
Yeah, the construction background too, so it made you a good fit for it.
Yeah, so I had a good eye. I'm very detail-oriented, or at least I like to think that I am. I'm always picking things apart. I did it in the car industry, and I do it in the housing industry as well. So I enjoy the inspections, but I also lend my wife a hand. There have been some instances where my wife and I had been in some open houses with women there, and they were by themselves. Had a couple individual stories that actually happened where one lady was being harassed, and we just happened to be there. We had parked down the street. They didn't even know I was there, or me or my wife for that matter. They thought the lady was still there by herself because they had already come in earlier and kind of scouted the place out.
Scoped it out.
And then he was coming back in the last 15 minutes where she was open. So we stayed and helped her close up and get out. But
That's
situations
good, 'cause,
like that.
Yeah, you don't know what could happen if you didn't show up
Yeah.
at that time.
So initially, you got
Yeah.
your real estate license when you were doing real estate
Mm-hmm.
to basically help
Jan,
protect your wife
Yes.
during these open houses and
Mm-hmm.
and other scenarios where she was alone or vulnerable to.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, we always make the offer, her and I do within our brokerage, you know, if you need someone there, you let us know because we know how it is.
Yeah.
And again, it's not specific to women. It can still happen to men.
Right.
And if someone's there by themselves, they're coming for a different reason. Maybe they're just coming to rob someone, or maybe they're just coming to clear the house out, and that guy's just the access point for getting in.
Right.
So many things. And then also being cognizant of when people come in, you always, when you go to lock up, you check everything, all the windows, all the doors. If there's a security system, do the security system. And the big thing is doggy doors.
Right.
People, you know, you and I might not crawl through that doggy door, but we might have a friend or we might have a young kid that we can coax into
Well,
going in and unlocking the door.
It's
Yeah,
interesting.
Oh, go
sorry.
ahead, sorry.
It's interesting you said that because my wife's an agent as well. She does it part time, but
Mm-hmm.
she experienced years ago where some men had come in and had unlocked the window as they were viewing the home into the open house she was in,
Right?
and they had unlocked every window in that home, and so when she went to leave, she made sure all the windows were already locked, but they weren't. They were all unlocked because these men had unlocked them. They were planning on going in afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, either
Smart of her to
squatting
check
or
'em.
robbing or whatever.
There were two guys that came in. One was keeping my wife busy, and the other one had toured the house. But I noticed he went in the garage and he was gone for a while. So I kind of figured maybe he was on the phone. So I looked out front. I didn't see anything. So I walk over to the garage, pull the garage door open. He's standing on a 5-gallon bucket, reprogramming the garage remote.
Oh, no way.
Wow. I'm glad you mentioned that
That's
because that is bold. Literally
But
is.
if people, I don't call those people desperate because some of them aren't desperate. Some of them, this is what they
This
do.
is their business.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it can escalate. I mean, it turns into bigger things, you know, so you just have to pay attention. You can't relax. I'm not saying you have to be on edge,
Right.
but when people are in that house, you can't relax. You have to pay attention.
So when you say pay attention to the agents out there that are doing open houses and that are showing homes, give them some scenarios, things they can watch for, things they can be vigilant on, and so that they're aware of their surroundings and what's going on.
Well, this has kind of been an ongoing battle, and it will be for most agents, so I'm sure your comments are going to blow up. But the biggest thing for an open house is to have people sign in. People that are, what we call them, nefarious or up to no good, they don't want to sign in. They don't want to put their information down.
But can't they use a fake name?
They can use a fake name, but if you think about it, you're not thinking on that level when you're there for bad intentions. You're
Right.
like, if I have to sign in, then there might be more problems. So the two best things you can do, have them sign in and have a sign at the sign-in table or wherever you're set up to do your sign-ins that say video and audio in progress. It doesn't mean you have to have it there, but they don't know that because we live in a technology-based world.
Right, and most houses have some sort of video or audio surveillance.
Yes. And you're required, because I go round and round with people about this, you're required if you are video or audio recording people from that house, you have to put a disclaimer up there so they can see that. You cannot take that and utilize it later if you don't. So have that up there and have them sign in. If they don't want to sign in, they're probably not your client. They're probably not there to buy a house, or they may be, but you can evaluate it at that point. If someone comes into that open house and you look out the front door or the front window and you don't see the car, ask them, are you from the neighborhood? You don't have to just say, well, how did you get here? You don't have to do an
Right.
interrogation,
Right.
but you can do pinpointed little things just like you would do if you're trying to find out if they're really interested in buying or selling. You just ask those questions. So ask them where they came from, how they got there. If you don't see something out front, see how many people there are. Body language is one thing, but not all people can do it. I'm very good at reading people, very good at body language and cues, especially audible cues and stuff like that. But you just have to pay attention, and then pay attention to what kind of questions they're asking you. There's just certain things sometimes that'll set things off. Like if they come in and say, "Hi, Tiffany, how are you today? I'm here to look at the house. By the way, is anybody else here with you today?"
Right. Red flag, red flag.
Yes. Say, "Well, my other agent was here. I think he walked out into the backyard." Doesn't matter if he was or he wasn't, but that guy's now on point
There's
to
somebody
think
else
someone
here.
else is around. And then if he comes back down and says, "Well, I didn't see anybody." Well, Paul might have walked next door and talked to the neighbor because the neighbor was over here. I'm not trying to tell people to coach or lie or whatever.
Right.
But when it comes down to you and you're by yourself, it's a big deal.
There's definitely safety in numbers. We've Stratton Inspections, we've had the opportunity to sponsor a lot of self-defense classes for agents, which has been fun for me to go to. Fun, but also reality check, because there's a lot of things that you hear, a lot of stories like agents that show up to take these classes that are just, like I didn't realize what a dangerous situation could be to be in an open house by yourself. And it's interesting because the community as a whole, I feel like everybody's got each other's back.
Right.
Like there's agents that would talk about how if they drive by an open house, a lot of times they'll just go in to make sure whoever's hosting that open house is okay. And make, do you need anything? And
That's
certain
perfect.
questions they'll ask each other just to kind of know I'm good for reals, or
Right.
or if they're not good, then there's you can let them know. But I think
Right.
safety in numbers.
It's so crazy we even have to talk about this, to be honest with you.
It is.
We're in that day and age where we have to, and we have to raise awareness, and we have to teach safety.
You have to be prepared. And then nothing is against self-defense classes because I've taught them, sat in on them, go to them to see what I can learn, maybe share what I know. It's hard for me because I'm more of an extremist when it comes to self-defense. One of the styles that I progressed in a lot was Krav Maga. That is a style that is very dangerous because of the harm you can inflict on someone else before you realize it sometimes, because it's the way you grab them and the way you maneuver them. And if they're not trained like you are in Croft, you might be trying to take them left and they want to go right. And then all of a sudden you've got their arm in your hand, and it's, you might not have detached it, but it's going to feel that way. So you have to be careful. The best thing you can do if you're doing self-defense classes for these realtors that feel like that's a good thing to do is be repetitive about it.
Right.
Do it more than
Consistency.
once.
One class to learn.
Consistency.
It creates
Yes.
awareness,
Yes.
but it's not going to teach you the skills you need.
Correct.
And ideally, you just don't want to put yourself in a situation where you need to use those skills, right?
Yeah.
I don't ever want to be close enough to anybody that's going to harm me that I have to fight myself off. But it's
Right.
also good to be aware that if that does happen, that I know how to react.
And two, if you can, you may not win the fight, but if you can buy yourself a second,
Yeah.
that second can save your life.
A big time. So, and then you can do things individually to be prepared. It's an open carry state. A lot of people will carry. But like I encourage everyone, if you're going to carry, you need to go shoot.
Learn,
Because again,
yeah.
you need to practice, because just because you went out and bought it and ran 10 rounds through the chamber doesn't mean you're going to be accurate. And sometimes you don't have to be. One shot's enough to scare a lot of people. But on the other hand, you need to be fairly accurate with it, because the last thing you want to do is pop off more than one shot and then it start walking on you and you're hitting someone else or something else. And then there's you could do a whole episode on shooting, because you need to know your backstop. You need to know what's behind. You need to know all your surroundings. So there's just certain things, but pepper spray is a good one. Anything that's going to make noise.
Same with pepper spray, though. Practice your
Yes.
pepper spray.
Yes.
I would spray myself and somehow get myself into more trouble.
It's
so,
horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Yeah. I've had it.
You've
It's
had
bad.
it.
Yes. And the way they teach you in a lot of tactics and law enforcement, military, is you don't pepper spray anyone until you've been pepper sprayed.
Right.
Because you need to know what it's going to do to you.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. And it is tough knowing the things that are out there. But then again, I think back sometimes, what if I would have taken a different path in life and never knew those things? Because a lot of the things I walked into, I wouldn't be here today, because I would have been walking in blind and not know what I know. And I definitely can tell you I wouldn't be here. So yeah, it's
But are there
just pay
days,
attention.
I bet, though, that you wish you didn't know what you know?
Yes. Yeah. Because when you hear about these people being trafficked and you hear about, some of the places around here where they've been snatching people up, it's like, wow. Because you know immediately what they're about to go through. And that's the hard part, because a lot of times the people that are taking these women, some will do a lot of harm, and other ones have the psychological approach, which is the number one. You overcome them psychologically, then you don't have to maintain them physically. And that's the best way, because, you know, it's not as brutal. They're not always scared of you. They're going to trust you, and you can keep them longer. But when you start abusing them physically, then it becomes of, how quick can I get away from this person? It's a huge psychological game that they play. And I just wish people would know that if they were pulled into a trafficking ring like that, and they tell you that they're gonna do bodily harm to your family, or this person or that person, or that they're going to take your passports, take all your IDs, it does not matter. Because once you get to law enforcement, that all stops. And most of the traffickers aren't looking at your family. They're not going to return to your house and do harm there, because it's drawing attention to them, and that's what they don't want. Right. They're living amongst us every day. Every day. They can be in your church. They can be in your neighborhood watch group. They can definitely be in your neighborhood. They could be people you work with. I mean, you hear about school teachers doing crazy things. They can be anywhere, and you never know it. And you give them the benefit of the doubt, because they're hiding in plain sight. You know, I've seen it a lot of times. So the best thing is, if you get taken and you can get away, it doesn't matter what they told you they're going to do. As long as you're running and you're making tracks and you can get to law enforcement, it's going to be a better day for sure. Just run. Don't look back.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do.
What are some things that Jan, if you were coaching Jan, what would you tell Jan?
The number one thing is your head's always on a swivel. You don't relax. If someone's coming into that house, if they're by themselves, evaluate them individually. The chances are most times they won't be by themselves, but they can be. If they're two or more people, then you kind of have to situate yourself in a positive environment. Positive environment's near a door. Keep something between you and me. Like when they come to sign in, she used to put her table on the side and she walked right up next to them. Put that table in front of them. Create that space, because you need space. With me, I'm different. My training, I don't want space. I want to be able to get my hands on you. So, but as a realtor, and you're dealing with someone you don't know, you want to create that space. And sometimes you don't have something in front of you, so change your stance. Don't stand sideways, hands out all bowed up, or with your hands crossed. You know, take that stance, you know, a tactical stance. And you don't have to look like you're about to hit someone, but you know, you create that. You can put the front leg out and kind of lean on your back leg. It gives you a little bit of room. Some people will make sure they have something heavy laying around close by. I know some agents, some women that I walked in on. I said, well, how are you going to do in this particular situation? And you look over on the table and it's like, oh, I got that. You see what's going on. Some women will stay close to their purse. Some of them will now wear the bag that they have on them, the shoulder bag. And a lot of times there's something in that bag. So that's another thing. If you're going to use pepper sprays or anything like that, you got to have somewhere to have them on you. But the biggest thing
you
is
have to have it pretty accessible too. Man.
Yeah, you do.
Split second, man, you're done.
Yeah. Main thing is doors open. You know, you don't want to have to run to a door like in a horror movie and try to unlock it and get jammed up trying to do that.
Have an exit strategy.
Exit strategy all the time, and more than one. We were always taught when we were going in somewhere, we always knew the exit before we knew the entry, because it didn't matter how we got in. We just needed to know how to get out.
That makes sense.
And getting out can be a problem if you get in and you're blind, and that's bad. So I would do that. Always have something close by. Create space. Always know your surrounding. And then usually have a check-in policy. If it's Jan and I know she's going to be at a 3-hour open house, I'm needing a text or a call every 15 minutes. And 15 minutes can be a lifetime of lead time if someone knows what they're doing. But if I've got 15 minutes and I haven't heard from her, I'm going to blow her phone up and say, where are you at? You okay? Whatever. It also depends on the neighborhood. If we're in the middle of Arcadia, I'm probably not too worried. But there can be other areas where you're a little more concerned.
And have an exit strategy.
Always.
Right?
Always.
So, I mean, safety in numbers. So I feel like realistically, if you could have somebody with you, then that's the best way to go. But that's probably
is.
not realistic every time. So these are
Yeah.
good if you can't have somebody with you. Little
Yeah.
tidbits to know. But also, I think too, like, I'm sure men have it as well. Women's intuition, like there's the spidey sense thing, and don't
Yes.
ignore the spidey sense. Like there
Never.
are times where the hair on the back of my neck will literally stand up, and I might not know why. I don't need to know why, but I know that there's something off, and I don't want to stick around and find out. So I think people just too need to be aware of their own intuition.
Correct. And you can also do the trick that a lot of celebrities do now when they don't want to be on an interview. They'll have their phone and they'll be FaceTiming or talking to someone. So if you're a little rattled, get someone on the phone, because if something
Great
does
idea.
happen, at least someone
got
on the phone
somebody.
heard it and they can call 911. You know, so and sometimes you just have to kind of think outside of the box.
And I think too, sharing location. I don't
Yes.
know. I make my daughters do that all the time. I'm like, I don't know how I would get to you really fast, but
Right.
at least I would know where to start looking.
Yes.
So somebody should always know where you're at.
Yes. It'd be a great idea for that, for sure.
Okay.
Oh, I have another question too.
Sure. Okay.
Sorry, I'm thinking more. This goes back to actually the sex trafficking thing. It could be myth, but I heard Arizona Mills was one of the worst places, like, in the United States for sex trafficking. Is that true, or
Yes.
you know it is?
When I was talking earlier about places around locally, I just didn't
I-10.
want to name them, but since
Oh,
you
I
named
flat
them,
out
yeah.
named it, but I've heard
Yeah.
that multiple times from different people. So I don't think it should be a secret.
Yeah.
Like if
It-
you gonna go there, if you're gonna let your kids go hang out there, you need to know.
Well, this is how wild Arizona Mills is. Before I met my wife, she previously lived here for like 15, 20 years, raised her twin daughters, went to private school here, Catholic school. Very smart women. One's a vet tech, the other one is a chiropractor. Very, very intellectually smart. And we were talking about people getting taken from Arizona Mills. And her daughter said, people really do that? Because she was going to Arizona Mills. And I said, anytime you want to go there and just sit in the parking lot, I'll go finger some people for you. And we'll watch what happens. Because it happens. We had an episode when she was in college and I trained her how to do some things. This kid wanted to throw her in the pool. She wound up plastering that guy's nose all over his face. But she had some training. And if somebody's going to bother you, you're going to be in college, you need to know how to handle yourself, or at least get out of a situation, create the space. And created a lot that day. But, it's helpful to know some things, just like Paul and his daughter. She knew to grab that weapon. She knew to grab a phone. At 14 or 13,
13 or 14.
great.
My guess is
great
Brooklyn
thing.
would have known how to use that
She
too,
did.
because you've
She
raised
knows
your
how to
kids
use
to
it.
know how
Good.
to use it.
That's the key, for
Yeah.
sure. And they need to know that. They need to know when they squeeze the trigger, it does go big bang. It's loud. Don't worry about that. You'll get over that part. Just keep squeezing.
That was good. Really good.
That was a good question. Yeah, because Arizona Mills is a hotbed. And the sad thing is they know about it, and there's a way to stop it. But they're not.
Well, there's so many tactics these guys are using too, just like putting, powder on their door handles to sedate them. What's it called? Fentanyl. Fentanyl.
Yeah.
Or working
Nasty
in
stuff.
numbers and on cell phones and literally hurting individuals so that they can get them. It's crazy.
Well, that's another thing that you touch on. When you leave any location, it is to your utmost benefit to not be on that phone.
Right.
And be aware, be looking at your surroundings.
Yeah.
Like I walk out, doesn't matter where I'm at, from the store to my car, I am looking around constantly. And that's something I learned with one of the self-defense classes. Is it's how you carry yourself.
Yes.
Head up high,
Yeah.
confident, and look around.
100%.
Like you're aware of what's going on.
See who's following you.
and
in
how
the
many
store.
times do you see people with their face in their phones, even walking across the
Oh,
street
yeah.
in traffic with their face in a phone?
Yeah.
Like they're going to get hit by a car, let alone taken. But
It's horrible.
Yeah.
I have a 16-year-old daughter, and this was 4 years ago, probably 12 years old. We were going somewhere. She was out here for visiting for the holidays, I believe it was, and we were going different places. And I had got out of the car and went somewhere, and I came back to the car, and Jan told me about the conversation later. She's like, you won't believe what she was saying while you were gone. She's like, it's so hard to go anywhere with Dad. And we're like, why? Because his head never stops moving. And it's a good thing, but a bad thing, because a lot of times if we're out in public, it's hard to enjoy it the same way someone else would, because
Right.
I'm looking for things. You know, I'm just looking
Because you've seen things.
yeah. And two, I came from a town of 1 million population. Now I'm in a valley with 5+ million. A lot more happens a lot faster. And you just watch the news every day and see all the crazy stuff that's going on in the valley. You don't even have to listen to the national news. Just listen to the local news. It's a train wreck. So just always watch what's going on. And I know people don't like to hear it, but just stay off the phone. There's plenty of time to be on the phone someplace else. You know, just don't do it when you're walking in and out or driving, because that's, you know, a lot happens. And a lot happens at 85 miles an hour. Not that I drive 85, but,
Never.
you know, a lot happens.
So I know too, there's some sort of an app that I heard realtors talking about that will do a background check. So if you have somebody that reaches out to you, is this something Jan uses or you know about? I can't remember what it's called. I wish I could. I need to find out what it's called.
Background check. I don't know.
Yeah,
Background check.
it's something like that, but they can do a background check.
on
So
your
before you're, you know, if you have somebody that reaches out to you as a real estate agent on social media, and you don't know who
Okay.
this person is,
Okay, I see
you
what
can
you're
do a
saying.
background check on him before you go to meet him at a house to show him a house.
Oh, yes.
Because that would be an easy way for somebody to lure. You know,
for
your
sure.
realtors are all over social media. Everybody is that wants to be
Right.
relevant right now.
Right.
So who knows who's seeing your picture and then
Or has the picture.
developing a sick obsession and
Yes.
wants to meet with you, and how easy is it to set up a realtor? Hey, can you show me some houses?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that they're always having to be aware of too. If you don't know who you're showing a house to, then you better be telling somebody, I'm going to go show a house to somebody I don't know,
Right.
and this is where we're meeting. And then also, if you can somehow do a background check to make sure it's
Yeah.
legitimate. Or
Now, I do know if they identify themselves as a realtor, you can look on, there are tools that we have access to. I believe it's, maybe it's on Armless, but there's a agent search, so you can go there. But the problem with that is, and someone should probably tell the commissioner or deputy commissioner of real estate, I won't say that I know her, but somebody should probably tell them that it'd be a great idea if every single agent actually put their picture up there. It's a requirement. They're supposed to do it. But if you go researching all the different agents within that MLS, their picture's not there. So you don't know who you're seeing. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it would be nothing for someone to reach out and have a second account with, instead of it saying Tiffany Turner, it could say Tiffany Turner, but you didn't notice the dot. And so now you're meeting him or her or whomever. And all of a sudden you just got catfished for a really bad reason. So I say, if you can't do something good about the identification from the distance of the computer, take someone with you every time.
that catfishing is crazy.
It
too.
is.
The things that so Paul's wife, Jen,
Mm-hmm.
is involved with Reaching Teen Hearts.
Okay.
And do you remember that thing we went to where they had sex trafficking
Yes.
awareness? And
It was incredible.
yeah, and there was speakers that are very involved in catching people or keeping preventative measures, I guess is what I'm looking for. I'm not explaining this well. Maybe you can jump in.
Wasn't there also individuals there that had been trafficked?
Yeah, but they were talking to a group
Right.
of young girls, teenagers. I think it was all girls. It probably
It's all girls.
Probably all girls, yeah. And just talking a lot about the catfishing that happens and how they lure them in and the mind games they play and the threatening of families or convincing them to send them a picture and then using that picture as leverage, you know,
Yes.
and exploit them.
Another thing maybe to touch base on, an idea to throw out there that we stumbled across when we were doing the whole trafficking thing, is there are a lot of, I'll say boys because they're less than 18, a lot of boys that are trafficked, a lot of young men that get trafficked.
And that's probably an easy target on like Xbox or
It's an easy target all the way around, but here's the problem. Men and boys can be abused too. I was in an abusive relationship before I met my wife and didn't even know it. Yeah, and what was happening in my relationship turned out to be really, really bad, and it never came to light until we had to go take a psyche eval, and then it blew up in her face. So And I didn't even realize it. And then once I got away from it, they're like, well, this has been happening, this has been happening, this has been happening. I'm like, yeah, every bit of that happened. And then I realized, wow. And so that's how I got taken advantage of. But when it comes to sex trafficking, there's a certain group that you like to target when you're after boys and girls. There just is. You're looking for that weak one. You're not looking for that strong one. You're not looking for the one that's walking confident. You're looking for the one with the head down, shoulders forward, facing the phone, not paying attention or whatever. Same way with the boys too. So a lot of times you have to reach harder to get the male population because they don't want to come forward and say, yeah, something happened to me. Because it's embarrassing. Male or female doesn't matter. It's embarrassing.
Right.
Huge. So that might be one you have to dig a little deeper on.
Right.
That's true. I've always said for some reason, I've always had a harder time letting my daughters leave the house as opposed to my sons. I have 2 boys, 2 girls, but honestly, they're just as vulnerable.
They are.
In some ways. So
They are. And when you can get them and when you can psychologically turn them, they disconnect. And where women, it's almost like they do the opposite. They find a fire and they really fight back. But the guy, once you break him,
he'll just shut down.
He'll shut down and then just go with the flow. And so it's really hard to describe, but it's like you have to get in there and help build the confidence at a young age. Otherwise, it would be like me when I was bullied. It took me to junior, senior year before I came out of my shell and fired back. And then all of a sudden I was getting in trouble all the time because I was causing pain. And, it wasn't a good thing. I did a lot of bad things when I was young. I did mean things because I was just letting it all come out and it was spilling out everywhere. So I had to learn how to reel it in. And then now as an adult, north of 50, it's like, okay, I can't still do some of those things because there's a lot more accountability now.
Yeah, and you don't want to do those things.
No, but if I were back in if I were back in some of those areas and doing some of the things that I used to do, it probably wouldn't bother me so much because of what I've seen and what I know. And some of those people, I don't know that incarceration is the right thing for them, but
So I really appreciate the information that you shared with us today.
Yeah,
on this podcast, and also the safety tips you have given all of us in this industry. I kind of want to pivot a little bit to home inspections.
Okay.
So what drew you to Stratton Inspections?
I was with a large company, and they wanted to make some changes they were shifting their company in a different direction that I didn't agree with. And so I wanted to step away from them. So I stepped out on my own for a little bit. I was going to give it a whirl. And I realized how much time, energy, and money that it would take to do it solo. And when I was mentored by a guy that did 3 a day. And I have to honestly say, I don't think that can be done at the level we do it at Stratton. 3 a day is tough. I'm not saying you can't do 3 small ones.
2 a day.
But you can't do, and I mean, we were doing everything. We were doing some big homes too. So, but I just saw how hard he worked, and he worked 6 and 7 days a week. Now, he made a lot of money. That's great. But at what cost, health-wise, relationship-wise? He was married, had a lot of things on his plate, and he did me a lot of favors. He did me a lot of good. Taught me some good things, taught me some things that I thought I could make better, and some things I didn't agree with. And he still does his job now. But I got away from that, went to a large company, gave that a whirl. That looked good at first, and then I just kind of didn't agree with the vision of where he wanted the company to be. So I stepped out on my own. And like I said, found out how that was going to be. And then I briefly helped out another inspector doing some work, and wasn't real comfortable there. It didn't give me the warm and fuzzies, or however you want to call that. Just didn't feel good. And for about at least 6 months, I would say, I noticed Stratton Inspections in my feed because I would follow the other inspectors, kind of see what they were doing, see what they knew, see how I could build and develop myself. And I kept seeing we're hiring. And I'm like, another big company, probably a lot of problems, probably a lot of drama. I've heard about some other big companies and their drama, and I'm like, I don't think I want to get back into that. So then I talked to somebody that I knew, and they're like, you probably ought to call them. So then I called. Actually, I think I texted, hit somebody on Instagram and said, are you still hiring? And they said, yeah, send me a resume or whatever. And then I did. And then that's when you called me and said, come in and do a sit down with us. And so I wanted to know. My big question was, I kept seeing the hiring sign, the little meme or whatever. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, okay, is there a problem with this company? Because they've been looking for somebody for a while.
We're just very picky.
Yeah, that was the first thing that went up for me. That was my red flag. And I said, well, I have nothing to lose. It was this company and one other company that I was going to interview with. And then I came in and I said, my rule is you never pass up on anything that you don't look at face to face, because it might be a deal.
100%.
Might be a deal.
Yep.
So I came in to check out to see what the deal was. And it's been a pretty good deal.
Good.
So no
good.
regrets.
Good.
None.
That's great to hear. We're happy you found us. We're happy you
Yeah.
learned all those things along the way,
Yeah.
but eventually wound up with us. And the one of the things that I do appreciate so much, I mean, there's a lot of things I appreciate about Paul, but the fact that he is so picky and so careful about who he brings on board our team.
Right.
And we've built a phenomenal team, and it just says a lot that he is careful. And some haven't worked out, but
Right.
the ones that have stick with us, and we have a great family.
We really
Yes. Yeah, everybody's been great. I kept telling everybody, because you would ask me, Paul would ask me, a couple other people would ask me, when I went on some of the inspections in the beginning, they're like, well, what do you think? And I literally would tell them, I'm just waiting on the other shoe to drop. Right? Because I was
You've
like,
told me that
okay.
several times.
Yeah. And I did. I'm like, all right, is it really just this easy and laid back, or does somebody have a camera I don't know about?
This is
Or,
for real.
This
is legit.
Yeah.
Well, you're a
and
good
it was so easy.
Good fit for our team, and we've heard the feedback we've gotten has been great on you from realtors that use us, and
Good.
we have a lot of realtors that will tell us
Yes.
straight up.
Some of them will.
What
They'll
are
even
you
tell me.
thinking? Or, yeah.
Yeah.
If
so
you
it's nice.
if you have good morale in a company, I mean,
Yes.
you want to do a good job.
You do.
You want to dress properly. You want to dress nicely, and it just makes all the difference. And then everyone gets along. It's just good synergy, and people want to stay because of the culture. And that's what we want to build, is a good culture of individuals that we all connect with and get along
Right.
with. No drama.
No drama.
Should never be a place for drama anyway.
No.
And so we're glad you came on, and
Good. Thank you.
You're the type of person we really look hard for. So
Awesome.
And it seems like such
That's a good
stretch.
compliment.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, no, you're fine. You're fine.
To go from what you've done in the past to where you're at now with the home inspections.
Right.
But you do have quite a bit construction background, you mentioned, so that kind of ties in and makes you a good fit for a home inspector. But what do you love most about this job?
The diversity and being somewhere different every single day. Because right out of school, I was kind of set in a path where I was either going to be in a certain place for a given time, or it was going to be an office environment. And I tell everybody, I don't do well in that environment, and I may be a little authority challenged. and the good thing about Stratton is it's not micromanaged, and you don't have that authority issue that you see sometimes with other companies or just other inspectors in general. I don't think anyone here feels like they need to flex their muscle or anything. Everything's just so even kill. And even on a bad day, everybody gets upset or whatever, but I mean, it's still drama-free and it's easy. And for me, that's what I like. I don't want the stress. I told you when I came in, you asked me, why would you do this? Why not stay on your own? Because then I have to do all the work. The way I have it, you guys provide half the work and I provide half
We
the work.
just tell you where to show up and
Exactly.
when, and you show up and do your thing.
Yes. And it's, I had a hard time learning at first because I noticed I was calling and texting into the office saying, how about this? And shouldn't you do this? And shouldn't you do that? And everybody's like, you're the inspector, you handle all of it. I'm like, wow. So I have freedom. So it allowed me to do my job, but still be a part of something bigger that made my job easier. So yeah, I would obviously I have, gladly done that. So I enjoy it. It just makes it easy.
Well, and we've created a team where literally it's not competitive. It's everybody's willing to learn and grow from each other and,
Oh, yeah.
and help each other. And I love that about the inspectors. Like everybody's willing to, share their strengths and
Right.
and build each other's up so that,
Yeah.
it's a good fit. Everybody meshes really well and nobody's trying to flex, like you said. So.
Well, we're in an industry where, let's face it, every day we're trying to find the negative in a home,
Of
We're trying to
course.
find issues.
Right.
And it's nice to have a positive outlook on it and an educated outlook on it.
Right.
That's what we can bring to the table. Because even though we're looking for negative stuff and things that are wrong in a home or whatever, we can still twist it into a positive way.
Oh, for sure.
And that is what I like about this company, is because we all get along, there's no drama, and we're all positive. And that's kind of how I want to keep it, because we see enough negative throughout the day.
Yes,
So it's nice to have a positive vibe.
it is. And I appreciate some of it because I've always said, I don't know everything. You can always learn. And I remember going on some framing inspections. And it'd been a while since I'd been in a framing environment and built a house. It's been at least 10 years. And I remember walking through a house with Matt, and I'm going, wow, man, learned some things, found some genuine nuggets with Matt.
Right.
And that was great. But then again, also proof that you have to stay humble. It doesn't matter how many houses I build or help build or supervised or, was the helper. You still learn if you're open-minded about
Right.
it. And things are constantly changing in the industry. Codes change. Different superintendents require different things.
Building
So,
materials.
Yes.
The list goes on.
so you just have to, and it's like that. Every inspector that I've encountered at Stratton seems to be the same way. It's a similar mindset. So,
Yeah, open to learning.
yes. Yeah.
Literally can learn something new every day.
Yes, for sure.
So thank you all for coming on. I hope you were able to take some good information from this. We really enjoyed having Ben on with us today.
Thank you.
And once again, Stratton Inspections and the Vendor Voice, signing off.